Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Katan, we have quite a few variety of stories here that we're going to discuss this evening, including a 28-point peace plan that President Trump is proposing for Ukraine and Russia to hopefully solve that war. So we'll have those details. Also, there was a drone strike in the oil fields in Iraq, and no one has so far claimed responsibility for these attacks. But interesting how, it causes them to have to get their more oil imported now because they're not producing as much themselves. So those stories, many more. But first, mental health. Now, neuroscientists at the University of Cambridge in England have released a new study revealing 4 pivotal ages throughout a person's lifespan where the brain undergoes major changes. So let's look at our first video here this evening, a report from ABC News for more details. Take a look.
This morning, a new study giving a closer look into how our brains develop as we age. Researchers found the brain has 5 eras that are split by 4 turning points where the wiring and organization of our brain shifts. It happens at these ages: 9, 32, 66, and 83.
We're sort of taking a Taylor Swift approach to brain development. The brain is constantly remodeling itself, improving itself, fine-tuning its connections.
From when we're born to when we're 9, scientists say we're in the childhood phase where gray and white matter grow rapidly. Next, the adolescence phase that lasts until about 32, which is longer than researchers previously thought. That's when communication networks are refined, leading to better cognitive performance. Scientists stress during this phase, it doesn't mean people in their 20s act like teens, but it is a major period of change.
The brain is undergoing a general pattern of reorganization and development, but certainly adolescence, as it pertains to our biology and our bodies and our psychological development, remains the same. This also happens to be the years where a lot of mental health problems start to declare themselves. So I think that gives us a new sort of direction in terms of the research on this.
Adulthood is from our early 30s to 60s, and scientists say this is the biggest shift when the brain starts to stabilize with a possible plateau in intelligence and personality. Then at age 66, we start the early aging phase, followed at 83 with the late aging phase, both showing a decrease in brain connectivity. Scientists say this study, which looked at brain scans of thousands of people, could help research more ways to keep our minds healthy. Doctors say we already know some ways to improve brain health. They include exercising, eating healthy, sleeping, managing stress, and maintaining healthy relationships.
Well, it's interesting as science becomes a little more developed, how they're seeing a lot more. The age used to be around 25, 26 years old, but now they're really finding out that it's more a developmental stage at age 32.
Right. Pushing it back quite a few years.
That's for sure. Well, Turkey welcomes Pope Leo XIV with a cavalry parade which escorted him to the presidential palace where he would be greeted by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his honor guard. This is the Pope's first overseas trip, and from the capital city Ankara, he encouraged the Turkish government to be a source of stability and dialogue amid efforts to end wars in Ukraine and Gaza.
He explained that what the economic and military powers are doing is driving violence around the world, stating, quote, "This is enabling what Pope Francis called a third world war fought piecemeal. We must in no way give in to this. The future of humanity is at stake." Now, next, the Pope heads to Lebanon, a country that has the largest percentage of Christians in the Middle East. He is hoping to deliver a message of peace in the region where there is only, at best, a shaky ceasefire.
Well, it's been 14 years since the leader of Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, was assassinated by NATO. Since then, his country has been ravaged by war, and the people left struggling much like before Gaddafi came to power. Well, today there are two leaders vying for power and turning to Western countries for help out of economic disaster. But will the people come out the winners if the government sells its main resource? Well, this next video dives into understanding how Libya plans to auction its oil to the highest bidders in hopes it will help save its country. Let's take a look.
Here's a story that sounds like the 1990s, a Middle Eastern country ravaged by war, a proxy battle between the West and Russia, and a new hunt for oil. Well, this is Libya in 2025. It's a country located in northern Africa. It's also a country divided into two camps. Western Libya is ruled by the UN-recognized government. Eastern Libya is ruled by a rebel commander. Since 2020, a fragile ceasefire has kept them apart. It is in this backdrop that an oil race is now unfolding. This week, a team from Tripoli visited the United States. They represent the UN-recognized Libyan regime. And their goal? To bring oil firms back to Libya. That's what they're trying to do. The regime is all set to auction oil licenses in 2026. That'll be the first time in 18 years that they're doing this, auctioning oil licenses. So naturally, there is a lot of expectation and curiosity. All the big oil firms are raring to go. Your Shell, Chevron, Total Energies, Eni, Repsol, all of them will take part. They're keen to see what Libya has to offer. The Tripoli regime is playing the long game here. They know that oil demand is rising. They know that Russian oil is getting sanctioned, so the market is ripe for a new player. Enter Libya. Right now, they produce 1.4 million barrels of oil per day. The target is to reach 2 million by 2030, and that's where Libya needs Western oil firms, because they have the money and the technology to help Libya. But that's the business side of it. What about the politics? Remember the rebel commander I told you about? His name is Khalifa Haftar, and Russia has long supported him. So this oil race is equal parts business and politics. The West gets two main things: fresh oil reserves and a check on Russian influence. And the Tripoli regime? Well, they get investments and an ally against Khalifa Haftar. It's a win-win for both sides. Of course, all of this is on paper. There are several steps before that. The first being the auction. Libya is putting 22 oil blocks for this auction. 11 of them are offshore. The remaining 11 are onshore. Put together, these blocks contain 1.63 billion barrels of oil and gas. Those are proven and discovered reserves. And there's potential for 18 billion more. The bidding will start in February next year. After that, the extraction will begin. Needless to say, security will be a key issue. Khalifa Haftar and his sons control key oil assets in Libya. They also have access to Russian military and technology, so expect them to fight back. Now we understand what the Tripoli regime is doing here. They're leveraging what they have because the people need help. Let me share some numbers with you. More than 32% of Libyans live in poverty. Around 435,000 people have been displaced. More than 2.4 million people need some form of assistance. Almost half of them are women and children. We don't speak about Libya often, but the fact is this is a humanitarian crisis, a major humanitarian crisis. So yes, it is tempting for the Tripoli regime to woo oil giants, to leverage their resources to help their people. But you can't deny the irony here. Western countries bombed Libya in 2011. They helped topple Libya's longtime ruler Muammar Gaddafi. So the West is responsible for the chaos that you see today. Now those same Western countries are coming back. Their companies will plunder Libya's oil. They will make huge profits. Meanwhile, Libyans will await their trickle, whatever is left after corruption and commissions. You see the irony here. Gaddafi was a brutal dictator. He stamped out free speech and dissent, but he also ran a welfare state. Libya used to be the richest country in Africa. They had the highest per capita GDP and life expectancy, but today it is a failed state, all thanks to Western nation building. Because the West thought they could decide who will rule Libya. As this new oil race heats up, we can only hope that there isn't a repeat. Yes, money and technology will pour in, but we hope it reaches the people of Libya, not just Western oil giants.
Katan, interesting how when Muammar Gaddafi was in power, the people were very much taken care of. They were doing very well. Now, as you see the statistics, the poverty is very high. And with these oil bids that they want to sell, now they're wondering, are the people in Libya going to see any of that? Or is it just going to go to the big oil companies as they bid for these deals with the oil?
Yeah, well, if history tells us anything about that, countries tend to go into oil-producing countries or countries with any type of resource, and they kind of strip the country of that resource, and the people do not benefit at all from it.
Or very, very little.
Very few, yeah.
Well, tension continues to rise between the United States and Venezuela, so much so that the FFA is putting out a warning to airlines of the potential hazards in the sky over Venezuela. Now, flights have already been canceled by 6 international airlines to the Caracas, and President Trump is contemplating putting troops on the ground.
Well, as we have previously reported, President Trump has been building a massive military presence in the Caribbean Sea using the USS Gerald Ford, the largest and most lethal aircraft carrier in the world, along with its entourage of warships. Now, this show of force is meant for Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who Trump has declared a drug terrorist supplying drugs to the United States. But President Maduro denies these claims.
Since September, the U.S. has carried out at least 20 airstrikes on Venezuelan boats in the Caribbean, which has resulted in at least 80 deaths. Now, however, the White House has not produced any information that proves these were indeed drug smugglers. Even Republican senators like Rand Paul do not know the facts. Now, in an interview with Face the Nation, Senator Paul tells Margaret Brennan, quote, "I've been given zero, not one briefing because I'm skeptical of what they're doing. They don't brief me or the General Senate at all."
And now President Trump is talking about putting boots on the ground, saying, quote, "I don't rule out that. I don't rule out anything. We just have to take care of Venezuela," end quote. Well, very soon President Trump is planning to speak with President Maduro directly, but he isn't revealing what he will tell him.
Finally, Maduro's government is being added to the State Department's list of the world's most dangerous terrorist organizations, which Trump claims would give him the right to carry out strikes inside Venezuela itself. But the experts do not all agree that is true.
Well, one of the largest gas fields in the northern Kurdish region in the country of Iraq has been attacked with drones, disrupting gas flow and, of course, electricity. Well, take a look at this next video for more on this breaking story.
Now, a drone strike has targeted one of the largest gas fields in the Kurdish region of northern Iraq. It suspended operations at the Emirati-owned Khor gas complex. Field storage tanks exploded, injuring some workers. At least 60% of the region's population has no power. It's unclear who's behind the attack, which comes days after security forces prevented another drone from reaching the facility. Let's go to Mahmoud Abdul Wahed, who's in the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. Good to see you, Mahmoud. So bring us up to speed. What impact has this had?
Well, Neve, according to the Electricity Ministry in the semi-autonomous Kurdish region, the attack has resulted in a halt of operation, a temporary halt of operation, and also a loss of about 80% of the gas flows supporting the power plants in the semi-autonomous Kurdish region. The loss is also, according to the Electricity Ministry in the Kurdish region, is also pertaining to the loss of 3,000 megawatts of electricity as a result of this attack. But today, this morning, the Electricity Ministry here in the federal government of Baghdad said that about 1,200 megawatts of electricity have been lost because of this attack. Now, some areas have been in blackout are also expected to continue experiencing a blackout in Erbil and some other regions in the semi-autonomous Kurdish region. This is not the first time, but this is a series of multiple attacks, similar attacks, either by drones or by rockets targeting oil and gas facilities in the semi-autonomous Kurdish region.
As you say, this is one of a series of unclaimed strikes on oil fields this year. No official word is being given, but is there any sense of who might be keen to target these particular facilities? Is there any idea of why this is happening?
Well, as of yet, there is no official accusation, neither from the Kurdish region in the north or from the federal government in Baghdad. But we understand that some Kurdish officials in similar attacks in the past, as you know that this gas field has been under attacks since 2022. Last year, 4 workers were killed by a similar attack. But Kurdish officials lean to say that they accuse Iran-aligned armed groups for such similar attacks, despite the fact that there is no certain group that has claimed the responsibility for this attack. But you know, Hormuz is very important. It's so significant, not only for the Kurdish region, but for Iraq in general. It provides about 500 million cubic feet of gas on a daily basis, which is very important to reduce Iraq's reliance on imported gas.
Katan, it's interesting that no one has claimed responsibility for those airstrikes. Usually somebody will eventually want to claim the responsibility of the strike and the reason why, but in this case it's totally unclaimed. But also 500 million cubic feet of gas producing, one day. So all of that now disruptive, they're going to have to look and actually outsource, that gas, bring it in now because they can't produce it there for their own citizens.
That's right. Sad.
Well, the U.S. Army Secretary met with a Russian delegation in Abu Dhabi. Talks were held there while Russia continues to attack Ukraine. The most recent of attacks by Russia claiming the lives of at least 7 people from a missile and drone strike in Kyiv. So far, the Ukrainians have agreed to a peace deal with some details still needing to be worked out, even though President Zelensky has preliminarily agreed to the terms. Ukraine hasn't officially confirmed anything as of yet.
That's right. And Moscow, on the other hand, has said that they've received nothing, while Vladimir Putin is remaining steadfast in his stance, creating kind of a political haze as to what decision he will make in the matter. Well, as deadly strikes continue between both sides, Zelensky has said that his team looks forward to meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump as soon as a date can be arranged, hopefully before November's end.
Well, finally, a meeting in Geneva took place between the U.S. Special Envoy, led by Steve Witkoff, and Ukrainian, European, and UK officials to discuss that 28-point plan for peace that President Trump has proposed to end the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Here's more on how things went in this next video. Take a look.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says any deal to end the war with Russia needs to strengthen his country and not weaken it. Officials from Ukraine, the EU and the United States met over the weekend in Geneva to discuss changes to a 28-point U.S. peace plan. It calls on Ukraine to give up some territory to Russia, among other demands. Addressing the Swedish parliament, Zelensky has said he would continue to work on compromises towards peace.
We are at a critical moment. And we are working closely with the United States, with European partners, with many others to define steps that can end Russia's war against us, against Ukraine, and bring real security. Putin wants legal recognition for what he has stolen, to break the principle of territorial integrity and sovereignty. And that's the main problem.
Well, all sides claim progress in the Geneva talks with a joint statement calling them constructive. The Kremlin says it was not informed on the results of the negotiations. The draft proposal is seen as favoring Moscow, which continues its large-scale attacks across Ukraine. Many Ukrainians say they're skeptical that the talks will end the war.
Well, when that draft deal was first proposed, Ukrainians were understandably quite upset, particularly with the fact that they would have to give up territory, also that they would have to be splitting their army in half. So this news that there is so much progress is quite surprising. We saw these recent posts on Truth Social from U.S. President Donald Trump insinuating that there was indeed a lot of progress. President Zelensky, we heard that soundbite earlier. He was addressing a conference in Sweden today, said, though, that the main sticking point continues to be the question of territory, and the details of that have yet to emerge. We can imagine that yesterday some of the finer details, maybe regarding security guarantees, could have been ironed out. But certainly here, the feeling in Ukraine is that it's a long way away from them accepting this peace deal in any way, how they would accept giving away any form of territory, how they would accept questions of their sovereignty relating to how they run their army, how they run their education system. All of those come into question.
There is a certain amount of confusion still about where this plan originated from. I mean, there was a point at which we thought that it was actually coming from Russia and had come through the U.S. Marco Rubio going on X saying, no, this is a U.S. plan. Do we have any indication from where you are in Kyiv about where the plan has originated?
Well, there's certainly been a lot of backpedaling from the U.S. side about where this plan originated from. In terms of whether Ukraine had any part of it, that's still unclear. The Umerov, who was the former defense minister, was said to be in Florida at the time that this meeting between U.S. Special Envoy Witkoff and Dmitriev took place, where they apparently pored over this plan for several days. Umerov says that he was on the sidelines, but that he was not directly involved in these talks. There were rumors that he approved certain points of the plan, which he later said that he in no way was a part of. So it appears, at least from the Ukrainian side, that the first time that they've been involved with this peace plan was over the weekend in Geneva.
Well, we're seeing a lot of, talking and negotiating taking place. We have, the Geneva meeting with the delegation there. We had the recent meeting in Abu Dhabi. And also, of course, the Pope has made his first international trip to Turkey, and in hopes of kind of, promoting peace or pushing the countries to bring about peace who are involved in these conflicts. And so far, it hasn't brought peace, but you can see that the nations and the leaders are really kind of scrambling to try to do something to reach some type of successful conclusion.
Right, and even though they try, it doesn't seem like they can actually accomplish anything. And what I thought was interesting on this last article that we showed, the plan, nobody knows where that originated. Of course, some people know, but some are still speculating, like, where did this 28-point plan for peace come from? Did it come from Russia? They said it wasn't Ukraine. Did it come from the United States? But interesting, they're still questioning where this plan came from.
That's right. Well, even though the nations aren't really sure where the 28-point plan for peace is coming from, there is an author of a true peace plan for mankind. And if you would like to learn more about that plan, contact the House of Yahweh. And when you contact the House of Yahweh, of course, don't forget to request your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and the monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites by going to yahweh.com, yisraelhawkins.com, or yahwehsbranch.com. You can visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. If you would like to email the House of Yahweh, you can do so by emailing info@yahweh.com. For any international calls, you can call the number that's on your screen now. And once again, if you haven't already done so, please check out the Yisrael Says program by going to YisraelSays.com, and check out the Ask Yisrael program by going to AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere, because up next is another classic sermon by Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.